The internet goes dark for 7 days. Who breaks first? People or systems? In the next minute, you'll see where cities stall, which business models crack, and why one small detail in authentication locks millions out of their money. We'll map the first hours, the second and third days, and the final push to day 7. We'll test payments, logistics, medicine, energy, media, and the human mind. Each chapter makes a promise, proves it with real mechanisms, and gives a takeaway you can use. By the end, you'll know which sectors fail first, which survive by design, and how to keep your home and work moving without a signal. Stay to the end for a simple checklist that gets you through the first 72 hours and the full week offline. The first hour feels like a pause button pressed on the world. Payment terminals blink but refuse. The cashier looks at the screen, shrugs, and asks for cash only. Card taps fail, PIN pads time out, and receipts do not print. Two-factor codes never arrive because the apps that deliver them need the same broken network. A small detail in authentication begins to lock millions out of their own money. In offices and co-working spaces, browser tabs spin and freeze. Cloud dashboards log everyone out and refuse to refresh. Engineers cannot reach repositories, wikis, or CI pipelines. Calendars vanish, links to meetings die, and the stand-up turns into a hallway talk. No one deploys, no one rolls back. Work shifts from ship today to write down what we know on paper. Group chats go quiet like a stage after a power cut. The unread counter stops climbing, but not because life is calm. Mobile networks fall back to voice and SMS, both crushed by sudden demand. Calls drop, redials loop, and voicemails pile up. Teams rediscover radio, landlines, and the office whiteboard. The fastest channel is now a shout across the room. On the street, drivers open glove boxes for old atlases. Couriers relearn landmarks and ask doormen for directions. Rides drift off optimal routes because the map tiles do not load. Travel takes longer, patience gets shorter, and one wrong turn multiplies delays. A city designed around live positioning tries to remember its past muscle memory. Warehouse workers print labels from cached templates if they can. When that fails, they grab pens and write SKU codes by hand. The scanner beeps are fewer, the checks are slower, and bins move with caution. Pickup points call customers one by one using whatever line works. Every minute of coordination now costs 2 minutes of correction. Retail floors switch to cash and simple arithmetic. The line grows because counting takes time, and the till cannot validate anything. Here's an unexpected fact you will use later. Many point-of-sale systems do have an offline mode. They can store a small number of transactions and sync them when the network returns. But limits are narrow, fraud checks are absent, and totals hit a hard wall fast. That hidden buffer buys hours, not days. At home, people search for news on blank screens. They turn to FM radios, battery TVs, and neighbors. Apartment group chats migrate to paper notes in elevators and taped lists on doors. The building manager posts times for water checks and trash pickup. Information becomes air again, but needs a local lung to breathe. Security and access controls show their own cracks. Smart locks tied to cloud services freeze in whatever state they were in. Door staff fall back to physical logs and wrist stamps. Office badges work if the controller is local, fail if it calls an external service. A small offline printer becomes the new pass authority. It is slow, imperfect, and keeps a line of people waiting. Inside hospitals, the lights stay on and so do local systems. Staff open paper binders that mirror digital protocols. Imaging remains available on internal networks, though sharing outside is not. Ambulances switch to radio codes and pre-planned routes. The triage desk uses markers and clipboards and moves faster than most offices that day. Medicine still works because it rehearses bad days in advance. Households organize their own quick triage. One person lists essential contacts on paper, another counts cash, batteries, and pantry items. Kids ask why the tablet will not play videos. Parents set simple rules for quiet hours, board games, and walks. The day begins to sound like a Sunday with more errands and fewer answers. By hour 4, a pattern locks in. Anything that lived fully in the cloud stalls. Anything with a local fallback limps but moves. People rediscover that proximity is a superpower. The whiteboard beats the feed. The envelope of cash beats a virtual wallet. The pen beats the app that will not open. Here's the promise we will keep next. We will show how a single hiccup in authentication cascades through banking, payroll, and retail, and how to avoid being trapped by it. The next chapter puts money on the table and asks what truly stops working first. Day 1 without acquiring feels like a financial low-pressure front. ATMs turn into bottlenecks. Lines bend around corners because machines cap withdrawals and empty early. The first runs finish by midday. Refill teams need routing, armored vans, and confirmations that now travel by voice. Each extra call adds minutes, and minutes multiply into hours. Cash becomes scarce where demand is dense and the van is late. Stores flip their payment logic. If the till accepts cash, the door stays open. When a customer has no bills, options narrow to IOUs, handwritten receipts, or a promise to return with cash. Some owners keep a paper ledger by the register. Others decline politely because risk now sits on the counter next to the candy bars. Refunds freeze, returns wait. Every yes or no costs longer than the price of a coffee. Here is a short story from the first afternoon. A neighborhood bakery bakes through its flour but cannot take cards. The owner pulls a school notebook from a drawer and writes "debt book" on the cover. Name, phone, order, amount, regulars sign, take their bread, and leave a few coins if they have them. By closing, the notebook holds 50 lines and a rubber band of small cash. The ovens never stopped. Trust carried the gap the network used to carry. Online authentication quietly blocks more doors than the down terminals. One-time codes ride through SMS and push apps that also need a working path. App-based 2FA cannot refresh tokens. Email links sit in inboxes you cannot reach. Password resets break at the last step. Even if the bank core is alive, your session cannot start and your balance is locked behind a missing second factor. The weakest link is not the money, it is the proof that you are you. Business payments stall in less visible but harsher ways. Vendors expect transfers on fixed days. Clearinghouses expect files uploaded by cutoff times. With uploads gone, receivables age overnight. Payables slip, discounts are lost, and late fees germinate. A healthy company can choke on a week of misaligned cash flows when trucks, salaries, and rent draw on money that did not move. The gap shows up fast in small firms and in big firms with thin buffers. Supply chains feel the kink where invoices and proofs of delivery live online. Drivers can hand over goods, but the buyer cannot verify and the supplier cannot invoice. Some partners agree to ship on verbal confirmation with photos saved locally. Others pause shipments because internal policies forbid blind releases. A single missing acknowledgement turns forklifts into statues and docks into expensive parking. The street invents new prices the moment official rails freeze. A gray exchange appears for banknotes, fuel, and staples. People who still hold cash sell time and certainty. A neighbor offers to pay your utility bill later if you front cash now. Another swaps flour for batteries. Barter does not need a stable unit of account, only two needs that intersect. Small markets bloom in courtyards and on corners, and each trade carries extra friction to compensate for risk. Watch how the slider between trust and friction moves. When the parties know each other, the handshake is enough and the transaction is quick. As trust falls, friction rises. More notes, more witnesses, more collateral, smaller baskets, higher implicit interest. Markets still function, but the throughput drops because every step adds verification by hand instead of by protocol. Meanwhile, the back room of every shop becomes a triage table. Staff count the till hourly, set daily cash caps, and post signs with exact change requests. Some split the drawer into envelopes for morning and evening to avoid running dry. Others close early to reduce exposure after dark. Fraud attempts rise, not always out of malice, sometimes out of confusion. A cashier rejects a crisp printed voucher because no one can check its origin. By midweek, a pattern is plain. Systems that marry authentication, acquiring, and clearing fail not in one dramatic crash, but through 1,000 small blockages. Cash substitutes for rails, but unevenly. Where cash and trust are present, commerce limps forward. Where both are thin, doors stay shut. The most fragile point is verification at the edge and settlement at the center. Everything else is symptoms. Here is a takeaway for any wallet, household, or store. keep a small cash buffer, keep identities verifiable without the cloud, and keep a paper trail simple enough to reconcile when the lights on the router return. Cash is oxygen, but clean records are the lungs that will let you breathe again tomorrow. The next question is movement. When money grinds, the next to stagger is logistics. Trucks, roads, fuel, and warehouse flows must operate on paper speed. Let's see how goods and people travel when maps, apps, and coordinators all speak more slowly than the city needs. Warehouses slow down the moment screens stop updating. Pickers who usually scan and go now collect paper pick lists from a printer that only cached yesterday's batches. The WMS that lives in the cloud no longer pushes tasks to handhelds or confirms locations in real time. Supervisors redraw zones with markers on a wall map. Replenishment shifts from algorithmic to visual. If a shelf looks thin, someone moves a pallet. Errors rise because one missed digit in a SKU code sends a runner across the building for the wrong box. Packing lines wait for manual checks, and the dock fills with half-verified orders. Transport management loses its eyes. The TMS cannot optimize loads or dispatch trucks with up-to-the-minute routes. Dispatchers reach for landlines and clipboards, pairing drivers and loads by memory. Bills of lading are written by hand. Proofs of delivery become signatures on triplicate forms that must be carried back and keyed later. The time from ready to ship to truck rolling stretches by a factor of 2 because every confirmation needs a person, not a packet. Couriers and taxis feel the loss of maps within minutes. Without live tiles and traffic, a city turns into a maze with stale hints. Drivers lean on landmarks and prior runs. Detours around construction take 3 guesses instead of 1 glance. Missed turns mean longer loops, fuel burn, and frayed tempers. The price of a ride climbs because uncertainty gets priced in, and the number of completed jobs per shift falls. Customers wait longer, cancel more often, and still end up paying more for less accuracy. Fuel becomes coordination in liquid form. Pumps can dispense, but point-of-sale terminals fail and remote telemetry does not report tank levels upstream. Attendants switch to cash boxes and tally sheets. Some stations set fixed rations per vehicle to stretch supply until the next delivery can be arranged by phone. The tanker that would have arrived based on automated thresholds now needs a human to notice, request, and schedule. One missed call becomes a dry pump on a busy corner by evening. Food chains move to triage mode. Shelf space for snacks and novelty items shrinks. Milk, bread, eggs, staples, and infant supplies get first priority for receiving and stocking. Without live sales data, managers walk aisles with clipboards and adjust on site. Backrooms serve as shock absorbers, but their capacity is small. Here's an unexpected insight that will matter in 2 days. Local buffers at stores and depots can carry the rhythm for roughly 48 to 72 hours. After that window, the lack of central coordination starts to cascade into gaps you can see and feel. City services reveal which systems are truly local. Parking meters that allow coins and cards fall back to coins and handwritten tickets. Bus and metro turnstiles that store fare tables locally keep working, but top-ups at kiosks are patchy. Inspectors validate with portable devices only if they hold offline lists. Otherwise, they wave people through to avoid bottlenecks. Traffic lights with local controllers keep their programmed cycles, but cannot react to incidents. The city still moves, just with less grace and more horns. Returns, exceptions, and edge cases clog the arteries. A pallet arrives with a dented corner and no way to file a claim in the portal. A refrigerated truck reaches a gate, but the security system cannot read the QR code, so the guard writes a pass and phones a manager. A driver finishes a run and needs the next assignment, but the dispatcher is already on 3 calls. Every workaround works, but each one steals minutes from the next problem in line. Coordination becomes a narrow throat. The physical capacity of forklifts, vans, and pumps is unchanged, yet throughput drops because timing loses its conductor. When 10 people must agree by voice instead of one system resolving a rule, the queue grows. That is why the first 48 hours look messy but manageable, and the third day starts to snap. The buffers absorb noise early, then emptiness begins to echo. The practical message is simple. Paper keeps goods moving, but the city loses its rhythm. The bottleneck is not horsepower or headcount, it is synchronization. Whoever can predefine analog procedures for routing, rationing, and proof will lose less time to ad hoc decisions and repeated calls. In the next section, we will look at a domain many fear will collapse first and discover why it holds better than expected. Medicine and emergency services practice bad days. Their protocols are local by design. Let's see how hospitals, pharmacies, and ambulances operate when the network is quiet but the sirens still sound. Hospitals do not go dark just because the internet does. Core clinical systems often sit on local networks that keep running inside the building. Electronic health records continue in a limited mode over the hospital's internal backbone. Imaging remains accessible through local PACS, so radiologists can read CT and X-rays from on-prem servers. Labs print results directly to wards because the LIS talks across the same intranet. When a screen refuses to load an external page, staff pull binders from shelves that mirror the most used orders, checklists, and drug charts. Downtime procedures exist specifically for these hours. Paper wristbands, pre-printed order sets, and stamp pads come out of drawers. A registrar assigns a runner whose job is to carry forms to radiology and back. It looks slow, but it is rehearsed. In a typical emergency department, the day pivots from clicks to stamps in minutes. Registration takes name, birth date, and a brief complaint on a card. A triage nurse marks category bands with a marker. The waiting room display, which normally pulls a live queue, becomes a clipboard on the wall. A resident dictates a note to a scribe who files it into a paper chart. Later, when systems return, a health information team will back enter the essentials from these packs. Care does not stop. The documentation path simply forks with a paper branch. Pharmacies continue to dispense with different frictions. When e-prescriptions cannot be verified online, pharmacists fall back to phone confirmations with clinics and to paper scripts where allowed. Insurance adjudication pauses or switches to batch processing for later reconciliation. To avoid gridlock at the counter, teams move to a short list of critical drugs and devices first. Insulin, asthma inhalers, antibiotics for acute infections, anticonvulsants, cardiac medications, infant formula, and needles. Non-essential items wait or are rationed. Controlled substances require stricter checks, so the phone on the back bench rings more often. Stock counts are done with clipboards. The queue is slower, but it moves. Ambulances handle the silence better than most civilians because they train for it. Radio nets stay active, with dispatch assigning calls over voice using pre-planned codes. Crews carry printed maps and route cards for common destinations, and many units keep locally cached GPS-based maps even without traffic data. On scene, paramedics follow algorithmic triage protocols that live on laminated cards and inside memory. Handovers in emergency rooms shift to structured verbal reports and paper forms that accompany the patient to imaging or ICU. Coordination is tighter, not looser, because there is less noise competing with the signal. Telemedicine is where the real pain shows. Remote consults that rely on cloud platforms stall completely. Multi-site tumor boards and rare case consults cannot pull shared images from external repositories. A rural clinic that normally uploads a study to a specialist in the city must defer or find a courier to carry a disk. Even inside large centers, any workflow that expects cross-institution exchange slows to a crawl. Radiology CDs and USB sticks reappear, with printouts of keyframes stapled to paper notes. The medicine itself does not vanish, but specialist reach shrinks to the radius of what can travel by person rather than packet. Donation services and cold chains keep their own clocks. Blood centers maintain refrigerators on local power with temperature recorders that store data offline. Cross-match testing works inside the lab without external calls, but reporting to regional registries waits. Platelets have a short shelf life, so courier runs are scheduled by phone with paper manifests. Vaccine storage remains safe if freezers stay within range, yet the alerting systems that would text a pharmacist about a drift in temperature may not. Some facilities set manual checks every hour, signing off on logs with pen and time. Oxygen is a separate constraint. Piped systems in hospitals depend on bulk tanks that are refilled on a schedule. If telemetry to suppliers is down, someone must phone in levels, and a delayed tanker becomes a clinical risk faster than most administrators like to admit. Not everything is smooth. A clinic that outsourced its EHR entirely to a remote vendor may lose more than others. A small practice might cancel a day of appointments if it cannot retrieve charts. A rehab center could pause admissions because the intake checklist sits behind a dead login. Those are policy choices as much as technical ones. Facilities that keep local read-only mirrors, paper fallbacks, and clear phone trees discover that care pathways bend but do not break. Picture the split across a simple axis. On one side are functions that require wide area exchange, inter-hospital image sharing, external authorizations, cloud scheduling, virtual consults. On the other side are functions that live on local rails: triage, vitals, drug dispensing with manual verification, imaging reads on internal servers, labs on the hospital network, radio dispatch. The first column slows sharply. The second column keeps pace with more sweat and more paper. The clearest lesson is that medicine does not fall first because it drills for outage conditions and preserves local control. Redundancy exists in procedures, not only in hardware. Staff carry the system in their routines when the system cannot carry them. The cost is extra time and later data entry, not a halt in care. The bridge to the next question is infrastructure. Hospitals kept going partly because their power, water, and internal networks held. What happens outside their walls determines how long that resilience lasts. Energy, water services, telecom backbones, and the everyday devices in homes and offices now decide how stable the rest of the week will feel. The skeleton of a city shows its strength when the network goes quiet. Power plants keep generating because their control systems sit on separate hardened networks. Operators switch to conservative set points and hold reserves. SCADA screens continue to show local telemetry inside control rooms. Where remote links are required, teams use prearranged voice protocols and manual confirmations. Field crews drive to substations, check breakers, and log readings on paper. Automatic protection still acts in microseconds, but discretionary changes slow down. Routines shift from optimization to stability. Grid dispatch follows a duty playbook. Non-essential switching is deferred. Maintenance windows close. Load forecasting reverts to historical patterns and local observation. If a plant trips, crews coordinate by radio to balance frequency, not by cloud dashboards. Rolling restart sequences are read aloud from binders. The result is less agility but solid continuity. Lights stay on across most neighborhoods because electricity's safety net was built for bad days, not just good ones. Water and wastewater systems lean on their own local panels. Treatment plants run with manual control of pumps, valves, and chemical dosing. Operators watch turbidity, chlorine residuals, and tank levels from physical gauges and on-prem SCADA. Reagent stocks are checked against consumption curves. If resupply is uncertain, managers adopt conservation targets and publish short schedules for high-demand zones. Lift stations are patrolled in person. If an alarm would normally send a text, now it triggers a lamp and a paper log and a truck roll. Sewage treatment continues with extra caution. Aeration basins need airflow. Clarifiers need skimming, and the outfall must meet permit limits. Lab tests are still done, but reporting to regulators waits. Rain events are the main risk. Without live forecast feeds, plants rely on local radar and river gauges where available. Crews pre-stage pumps and generators. The city's water cycle does not halt, but it does require more boots and more checklists. Cellular networks bend under the sudden weight of voice. People who would normally text or stream switch to calls. Base stations handle control plane load differently than data plane load, and congestion hits fast. Emergency services receive priority by design. Calls to family may drop while calls to dispatch go through. Operators may tighten cell breathing, reduce bandwidth-heavy features, and ask the public to keep calls short. SMS can sneak through when voice is busy, but even that path is noisy. The advice is simple. Send short, clear messages and try again later. Broadcast comes back to the center. FM radio and over-the-air television become the primary mass channels for news and guidance. This is an unexpected turn for anyone raised on apps. A small radio with fresh batteries can hear the city when the city cannot hear itself online. Stations coordinate with public offices and utilities and push updates at the top of each hour. Households set the dial and leave it there while they get on with their day. The one-to-many model regains its value because it does not need a return link to function. Smart homes and small IoT fleets reveal their hidden dependency. Thermostats that check a cloud service for schedules stop adjusting on command. Cameras still record locally if storage is present, but remote viewing fails. Voice assistants are reduced to timers and local music. Smart locks work if credentials and logic live on the device, fail if every unlock is a server call. Irrigation controllers continue on last known programs, then miss weather-based skips. The home keeps working, but the intelligence is thinner than marketing promised. Every system that was sold as seamless seems the moment the cloud is out of reach. Commercial buildings face a similar split. Building management systems that run on local servers keep HVAC and lighting on point. Cloud-only dashboards go blank, but the mechanical floor hums. Access control permits with insight decisions, yet reporting to a central security center waits. Elevators operate with their own safety logic and do not care about the internet. What suffers is coordination between sites, not the physics in one place. Neighborhoods adopt practical habits. A resident posts radio frequencies for local news and emergency bulletins in the lobby. Another organizes a time window for water-heavy chores to reduce peak demand. The superintendent schedules generator tests and shares a printed weekly plan. These low-tech acts smooth demand and give people a sense of rhythm in a week that tried to erase it. The pattern repeats across the skeleton. Core utilities hold because they rely on isolated control and trained operators. The shiny layers on top wobble because they depend on constant remote orchestration. The trade is speed for certainty. For a week, certainty wins. The city functions, more slowly and with more hands. Here is a takeaway before we turn to people. Basic systems last longer than smart add-ons because they were designed with local authority and boring fallbacks. Old broadcast becomes the main newsfeed because it does not need you to answer back. Next, we will look at psychology. Businesses can pause and adapt, but minds react faster. We will see who struggles first without a feed, how families form local loops, and why day 3 feels different from day 1. The first 2 days feel like riding in a car after the engine cuts out. Momentum carries you at first. Some people call it a detox, others call it a crash. Notifications are gone, the reflex to check them remains. Fingers lift toward pocket screens and return empty. Attention stretches, then snaps back in waves. Sleep is odd the first night because the mind expects a late scroll and gets silence. By morning, some feel clearer and less jittery. Others find the quiet louder than any feed. Cravings come in short bursts tied to habits. Coffee break, commute, bedtime. Without the tiny rewards, small tasks feel heavier until the body stops asking for the next ping. Homes adjust their rhythm by day 2. Families pull chairs to the table and negotiate rules for noise, chores, and shared time. Neighbors meet in stairwells and courtyards with practical agendas. Who has a battery radio? Who can watch kids in the afternoon? Who knows a good deck of cards? Board games and jigsaw puzzles return from closets. A chessboard sits on a crate near the entrance and names collect on a simple sign-up sheet. Conflicts surface where expectations were previously buffered by screens. Someone hogs the only working lamp for a novel. Someone else needs quiet to make a phone call on a line that drops half the time. The friction is real, but it is local and negotiable. People trade an hour of laundry time for an hour of the good chair by the window. Work finds a shape that resembles older offices. Meetings happen in rooms with actual walls and start on time because the calendar is pinned to a paper schedule at the door. Notes are taken on legal pads and typed later if needed. Decisions are made by whoever is present with a promise to brief those who could not attend when the line opens. Document flows slow down and fatten. Drafts are printed, marked up with pens, and signed. Managers push deadlines forward and draw a new plan on a whiteboard. The teams that adapt fastest are the ones who already knew each other's phone extensions and could walk across the hall to ask for an answer. Schools run on improvised rails. Teachers print packets that cover a week of reading and exercises. Lessons shift toward chalkboards and project-based work that can be done with rulers and glue. Parents receive schedules by paper flyer or through a radio bulletin at set hours in the morning. Students form study circles in courtyards and stair landings. The first day is chaotic and exciting. The second day is slower and more focused. The missing screen time turns into extra minutes to ask questions and to explain steps out loud. The grade that struggles most is the one most used to tablets for everything. They adjust by turning handwriting into a game and reading aloud in pairs. Time changes shape without the constant option to fill it with a scroll. Walks become common, not because they are virtuous, but because they are simple. People notice the distance to the next bakery and the sound of the tram under the bridge. Books that sat unread for months draw a finger under lines. Junk drawers are emptied onto tables and sorted. Hinges get oiled and shelves leveled. Instruments are tuned. A forgotten sketchbook opens and receives new pages. The home turns from a dock to a workshop. Here is a small story from a quiet courtyard. A teenager drags a crate downstairs with a stack of paperbacks and a handwritten sign that reads, "Take one, leave one, talk if you want." A neighbor adds 3 cookbooks and a pile of magazines. Hours later, 2 kids trade a mystery for a field guide to birds. The building group decides to set a reading hour every evening at 6, when voices drop and pages rustle. A library grows from nothing because people needed somewhere to put their attention that felt useful and shared. It does not solve any major shortage, and yet it lifts the mood of the whole block. If you could paint a heat map of anxiety over the first week, day 1 would glow bright at the edges as routines break. Day 2 cools in the middle as practical tasks take over. Day 3 warms again when novelty fades and questions about work, money, and news compound. Day 4 begins to cool once households learn a pattern for checking in, sharing updates, and managing uncertainty. The final days settle into a muted palette that spikes only when something unexpected happens, like a rumor or a personal emergency. The pattern is not identical in every home, but the curve repeats often enough to be useful. By the middle of the week, most minds click into a different gear. The appetite for headlines remains high, but the need to refresh is replaced by the habit of waiting for the top of the hour on the radio. Small rituals form: morning lists, midday walks, evening lights out. People who were restless on day 1 become resourceful by day 3. People who floated through day 1 on relief may feel the drag on day 3 when they realize social life takes effort without the easy bridge of a chat thread. Almost no one is physically worse off because the city still runs. What bites is information hunger and the loss of easy coordination. Workplaces mirror these shifts. Teams that try to replicate chat with endless calls burn out by midweek. Teams that establish windows for decisions and quiet blocks for focused tasks recover faster. Leaders who set a simple rhythm lower stress. The sign on the wall that says status updates at 9 and 3 does more to calm a floor than any speech. Stores post hours and stick to them. Households post chores and rotate them. The shared rhythm becomes a low-tech network that carries expectation and trust. The week teaches an unexpected skill. People relearn how to leave space between inputs and reactions. Without the next alert, a mood can pass without sparking a reply. Neighbors get better at face-to-face negotiations. Families get better at timed blocks of solitude. Teenagers discover how long an hour feels when focused on a single thing. Adults rediscover how quickly an hour vanishes when fixing a door that always stuck. Both observations reduce the hum of anxiety. The small conclusion is clear. Minds adapt by day 3 or 4. The body stops expecting a buzz every few minutes. The household stops hunting for miracles in a silent phone. The hunger for information remains, but it moves from compulsion to scheduled intake. Most discomfort is not from lack of power or water. It is from a lack of effortless coordination and constant novelty. Once a routine replaces those, the quiet turns from threat into background. Next comes the question of who bends first when money is tight and coordination is hard. Some businesses were built to run on offline grit, others on always-on rails. In the next part, we will sort winners and losers for the week and see which sectors stumble early, which switch to paper and survive, and which find opportunity in a city that has learned to wait. The ranking starts with a simple measure. How much of a sector's revenue depends on live connectivity at the edge and clearing at the center. E-commerce and app-first delivery take the immediate hit. Front ends vanish. Carts cannot load, inventory cannot confirm, and payment pages are blank. The quick fix is a phone tree and a manual call center. Operators answer with scripts, take orders on spreadsheets, and assign drivers by voice. It rescues loyal customers and small baskets inside tight delivery radii, but the model sheds most of its volume because it was built for parallel clicks, not serial calls. Driver utilization drops, error rates rise, and the last mile promise shrinks to a few neighborhoods the dispatch manager can see from the window. Offline retail and street markets absorb part of that demand. Foot traffic swells where shelves still have staples and where cash is welcomed. But assortment gaps appear quickly because category management lived in the cloud. The store knows what is on the pallet and what is missing only by walking the aisles. High-turn items like milk, eggs, and batteries anchor the flow. Long-tail products get lost or sit in the back for a lack of signals. Independent shops with owners on the floor outperform chains whose staff wait for instructions from a dashboard that will not load. A handwritten sign that says fresh bread at 4 brings a line that no algorithm would project that week. Manufacturing sits in the middle of the vulnerability curve. Plants with local MES and on-prem ERP continue to schedule work, book labor, and track batches inside the fence. Dispatch to suppliers and customer slows because ASN and portal flows stall. Plan versus actual becomes a whiteboard with magnets and a daily stand down at shift change. The bottlenecks show at the gates, shortages on inbound components and delays on outbound paperwork. Quality holds until documentation can be reconciled. Plants that kept paper routers and job travelers find they can keep yields stable and output respectable. Plants that outsource core coordination to cloud schedulers lose days waiting for a login that never refreshes. Media and advertising look like a time machine in motion. Digital ad buys and performance dashboards freeze. Sales teams pivot to what works without a click. Broadcast spots, print inserts, and out of home. Radio becomes a surprise winner because it already holds attention at scale and its sales cycles are short. Stations extend news blocks, and hosts read public service messages and small business offers that used to be pre-rolls. Billboards carry updated creative by couriers and USB sticks. Newspapers and neighborhood flyers regain relevance as distribution networks for schedules, coupons, and announcements. The attribution is crude, but the reach is real. Businesses rediscover the power of a simple offer stated clearly at the top of the hour. Creators split sharply by the physicality of their work. Stream-only performers, live sellers, and daily upload channels stall unless they prepared a queue. Those who banked episodes and scheduled drafts can keep releasing from laptops that only need local editing tools. Musicians who can play rooms book last-minute sets in cafes and courtyards. Photographers and illustrators turn to pop-up prints, zines, and small markets. Educators host in-person workshops in libraries and community centers. The audience is hungry for contact, and a poster on a pole and a word on the radio replace algorithmic discovery for a week. Some creators discover that merchandising and teaching keep cash moving when CPMs are zero. The profitability map flips in unexpected places. A pure-play delivery app spends heavily to keep a skeleton service alive and retains little margin on each manual order. A corner store with steady hours and a whiteboard for specials turns inventory faster than usual because choice is narrower and the trip is certain. A mid-sized factory that can run 18 of 20 operations without the cloud keeps its staff busy and ships partials on paper, which clients accept because everyone is on the same clock. Agencies that can write 20-second radio copy and lay out a one-page flyer win budgets that might have gone to programmatic last week. The durable trait is the ability to transact, coordinate, and prove delivery without external systems doing the stitching. Here's a useful insight for both retailers and customers. The paper coupon becomes a new promo code. A square of printed paper stamped by a shop and valid for 7 days drives footfall with the same psychology as a digital discount. It works because redemption requires nothing but presence and because verification is visible to buyer and seller. Shops clip redeem coupons to a string behind the counter and count them at close. The data is fuzzy, but the cash drawer tells the real story. 2 operational habits separate survivors from strugglers. First, clear public schedules and offers. Stores and service providers that post consistent hours and simple deals reduce uncertainty, which is the largest tax on demand. Second, analog proofs. Delivery slips, stamp cards, signature logs, and batch stamps replace pixels with paper that can be reconciled later. The businesses that complain least about the mess are the ones that can point to a stack of documents and say, "This is what happened, we will key it on Monday." The ones that complain most are those who have nothing to show because everything they did used to live on a server elsewhere. Ranking by fragility for this week puts cloud-native consumer platforms near the top, followed by logistics services tightly coupled to those platforms. Next are media shops that only sell digital reach and cannot package a radio or print buy on short notice. In the middle sit manufacturers and wholesalers that can run locally but depend on networked partners for timing. Toward the resilient end sit offline retail with dependable supply, repair services, and trades that convert time and skill directly into value. At the durable end are utilities and public services that never relied on the public internet in the first place. The micro conclusion is blunt. Models that are purely online and lack an offline plan B are the first to break. Every operation that kept a manual lane, even if it looked old-fashioned last month, finds it priceless now. The cost of maintaining those lanes was an insurance premium. The payout arrived on day one. We are almost at the central claim of this story. We have seen who bends and who holds. Now we will tie the strands and answer the main question that started our week. Who actually breaks first when the internet goes dark? And why that failure propagates into so many other rooms. A final ranking needs clear rules. We judge each sector by 4 criteria. First, dependence on live connectivity at the edge and in the core. Second, depth of buffers in time, stock, and procedure. Third, presence of offline protocols that staff can follow without logging in. Fourth, speed of recovery once links return. The more a domain can act locally and reconcile later, the lower its vulnerability. The more it needs a remote handshake before every move, the higher it sits on the list. At the resilient end lies basic infrastructure: power, water, wastewater, and their control rooms operate on isolated networks with trained crews. They slow to safe modes, but they continue. Next sits medicine. Hospitals, labs, and ambulances keep care moving on local rails. Telemedicine and inter-hospital exchange suffer, yet core treatment holds. Then comes offline retail. Shops and markets with cash drawers, paper logs, and owners on the floor turn demand into sales, though assortments are uneven. After that, we place manufacturing. Plants with local MES and on-prem ERP keep lines running, then queue paperwork for later. They lose time at gates and docks, not on the line itself. Higher up, we meet media and advertising. Digital freezes, but radio, print, and billboards return with effect. Above that is logistics. It moves, but it loses rhythm without system dispatch and verification. Closer to the top sits e-commerce and food tech. Their front ends vanish and manual call centers save only fragments. At the most fragile peak, we find finance, payments, and cloud-only online services. They rely on authentication and clearing that cannot be faked or deferred without risk. The comparison that matters is between the payment contour and a typical cloud SaaS workflow. A card terminal or an app checkout needs a chain of approvals. Identity proof, fraud rules, account checks, and settlement messages must pass across networks and back in seconds. When any leg fails, no safe fallback exists at scale. You cannot accept a card and promise to ask the bank next week without taking on fraud and chargeback exposure that could sink a small business. A cloud SaaS process has similar brittleness. If the scheduler, repository, or ticket system is unreachable, work that depends on the live state cannot advance safely. Staff can invent workarounds, but they risk conflicts and collisions because the source of truth is trapped behind a dead session. Look at the counterexample. A hospital can place orders on paper, draw blood, and run tests because the lab, imaging, and wards share an internal network. Even if a portal to a tertiary center is down, care inside the building is local. A grid operator holds voltage and frequency because the plant and substation talk on private lines or direct radio. The point is not that these sectors never fail. The point is that their normal design expects failure at the edge and provides train steps to span it. The middle tiers show a gradient. Offline retail works if trust and cash exist. When one is light, friction rises, but trade continues. Manufacturing depends on physical input and local procedures. If inbound parts are missing, the line pauses. If the plan lives only in the cloud, the pause lengthens. Logistics is timing made visible. It can run on paper, yet every exception eats more of the day, and exceptions multiply. Media adapts by swapping precision for reach. A poster in a radio spot cannot target like a pixel, but they tell a crowd what time to show up and why. E-commerce cannot swap the web for a phone without shrinking its throughput to a sliver. Edge conditions and black swans can flip local results. A storm that takes out a feeder line stresses the grid more than the lost internet did. A wastewater plant with a stuck valve may spill if the alarm was only configured to text. A warehouse that loses a supervisor for a day loses the coordination layer just when it is most needed. Human factors matter. The team that rehearsed downtime drills performs. The team that never printed a pick list before spends hours arguing over templates. Here is a fact that felt old yesterday and profitable today. Paper processes often deliver a positive return on investment in a crisis. They cost time and storage in good months, but they turn delay into continuity when networks fail. A signed delivery slip, a stamped coupon, a ledger of IOUs, and a batch of printed work orders convert uncertainty into an auditable trail. That trail reduces disputes and shortens the catch-up once systems return. What looked like redundant overhead becomes a bridge that carries revenue across a gap. Consider a small story from a side street. A corner store loses its terminal at noon and keeps a door open with cash. By afternoon, the owner prints simple coupons on a home printer with a date and a stamp. Buy staples today, bring the coupon back within 7 days for a small discount on produce. People take them because nothing else is moving and they want a reason to return. The coupons hang on a string behind the counter when redeemed. The owner reconciles totals at night and circles the number in a notebook. By the end of the week, footfall is higher than last month. Trust brought people in on day 1. A small promise printed on paper brought them back on day 4. Now we can state the ranking without hedging. Over 7 days, the first to crack is the link between payment and cloud-native SaaS processes. The pair shares the same weak traits. Both require fresh remote tokens and near instant clearing. Both lack safe, scalable fallbacks. Both break at the edge and block value at the center. The rest of the economy stumbles because money cannot change hands at speed and because many workflows cannot change state without a server blessing. Utilities and medicine hold because they were built to operate locally and synchronize later. Retail and manufacturing muddle through because people can push paper and move goods even when they cannot move data. Logistics and media adapt with losses but do not stop. The micro conclusion is short. The sequence of failure begins where verification and clearing live. Cash and paper buy time. Local protocols keep critical services steady. The rest of the week is a test of buffers and the will to use boring tools well. From here, we turn the ranking into action. The next part distills the first 72 hours into a checklist for households, teams, and small businesses. It will cover cache buffers, identity proofs, analog schedules, and the few tools that turn a hard week into a manageable one. Start with yourself. In the first 6 hours, make a small map of your world. Print or draw routes to home, work, school, and the nearest clinic and pharmacy. Put cash in 3 envelopes: small bills for daily purchases, a reserve for fuel or transport, and a spare held back. Write your top contacts on paper: family, neighbors, work, building manager, doctor. Add landlines if they exist. Place a battery radio or a hand crank unit where you can reach it, with spare batteries taped to the side. Build a simple kit: first aid basics, regular medications for a week, water for 2 days, a flashlight, a pen, and tape. Put a notepad by the door for messages if you leave. Decide on radio stations and check at the top of each hour. For the family, name a rally point right now: the kitchen table, the lobby bench, the bench by the courtyard tree. If you are apart, set 2 windows to check in by voice, morning and evening. Assign roles. One person handles food planning and cash, one handles information and radio notes, one checks on elders, pets, or neighbors, one handles kids' activities. Write the plan on a sheet of paper and put it on the fridge. Set rules for news flow. No rumor spreads until confirmed by a radio bulletin or a trusted neighbor. Post a simple schedule: wake, chores, work or study block, outdoor time, quiet hour, lights out. For kids, lay out offline activities that are ready without supervision: drawing kits, puzzles, a deck of cards, a ball, a reading hour with a shared book. Make the evening a ritual: a shared meal, a short walk, then a quiet hour for reading or board games. People relax when the day has a shape. For small teams and businesses, the first task is to rebuild your ledger on paper. Print or handwrite yesterday's open orders, supplier contacts, and delivery schedules. If printers are down, take phone photos of screens and keep the device in airplane mode as a reference. Appoint a scribe for each shift to maintain a running log of decisions, orders taken, goods received, and cash counted. Prepare offline receipts: pre-numbered pads with date, item, quantity, price, and signature. Stamp them if you have a stamp. Post store hours that you can keep. Offer a narrow, reliable menu or assortment, rather than a wide, unreliable one. Choose 2 alternative sales channels you can run analog: a sidewalk table and a phone line, or a radio ad and a window poster. If you deliver, define a small radius, set 2 runs a day, and use stamped delivery slips as proof. Create manual SOPs for the week: opening checklist, cash handling, returns, rain plan, and close procedures. Keep a reconciliation envelope for each day: receipts, notes, coupon stubs, and a cash count sheet. Use the first day to stabilize. Individuals confirm routes, stock the kit, and set the radio habit. Families test a rally point in the 2 check-in windows. Businesses print or write their core lists, post hours, and announce one clear offer. Keep messages short and consistent. The more people know when you act, the less they will ask between. Use the second day to optimize. Individuals sort tasks by location and batch errands. Plan 1 trip to cover 3 stops. Families rotate roles to avoid burnout and update the chore list based on what actually happened. Businesses shorten the catalog, anchor on staples, and add 1 simple promotion that works without a database. A paper coupon becomes the new promo code. Date it, stamp it, offer a small discount, and collect redeem slips on a string behind the counter. The data is fuzzy, the cash is clear. Use the third day to build resilience. Individuals add a spare set of keys and a photocopy of an ID to the kit and list 2 backup meeting spots. Families write a contact map of close friends and neighbors and assign 2 people to check on the vulnerable. Businesses document the manual week as a 1-page playbook: how to take an order, how to confirm fulfillment, how to handle a mistake, how to close the till, and how to hand over a shift. Train the next person in 10 minutes with that page. Across all 3 days, reduce dependence on ad hoc calls. Schedule decisions. Individuals pick 2 windows to make and return calls. Families cluster planning at breakfast and sunset. Businesses hold status at opening and mid-afternoon, then leave people to do the work. Use walls well. Post a plan where eyes land naturally. Replace uncertainty with visible promises you can keep. Keep cash safe and simple. Break large bills early while change is available. Count drawers at midday and close. Separate float, revenue, and petty cash into marked envelopes. Sign and date each count. If you run out of change, switch to rounded pricing and post the rule. Keep identity verifiable without the cloud. Individuals write down emergency contacts and carry a card with name, address, allergies, and 1 phone number. Businesses keep a paper list of approved pickups, stamped or initialed, and check IDs by site. If you cannot verify, shrink the risk. Smaller baskets, partial shipments, pay on pickup. Keep proof of work for the catch-up. Individuals note expenses and appointments on paper. Families keep a daily log with radio highlights and decisions taken. Businesses bundle each day's documents so that when systems return, you can key by stack and close the week without disputes. The final insight is blunt and freeing. Resilience is not about the shiniest tools. It is about small stocks, simple habits, and written procedures that let you act locally and reconcile later. A folded map, a radio, a short list of contacts on paper, and a week of essential meds do more for a person than any new app. A family table with a posted schedule and a reading hour does more for morale than a dozen feeds. A business with paper receipts, a stamped coupon, and a one-page manual keeps trading when the screen goes blank. Technology will come back. What carries you to that moment are the analog behaviors you decided on before the week began. A week without the internet hits payments and cloud services first, but it does not switch life off. Cities keep their skeletons moving. Power holds, water runs, hospitals work on local rails, retail and manufacturing trade, speed for certainty, and carry on with paper and trust. People adapt on day 3 or 4. They replace a reflex to refresh with a habit to check the radio at the top of the hour. The signal returns to rooms and streets instead of screens. The pattern is clear. Systems built to act locally and reconcile later bend, not break. Paper trails, cash buffers, and simple schedules cut friction. Families set rally points and rules for news. Teams rebuild ledgers and routines by hand. Stores shrink menus and post hours. The week rewards boring preparation over clever dashboards. When links come back, those who kept proof and rhythm recover fastest. If you want it, I will make a separate episode with practical offline packs for home and for small businesses. It will include short lists, templates you can print, and the few tools that make a hard week manageable. Subscribe, save this video as a checklist, and tell me in the comments which item you would add to your own plan. Your notes will help shape that next episode.